Hello, thank you for tuning in with me again as we continue with our chapter club. We are reading The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas, and we should finish up this week, so I will get started. We finished off and we're at chapter 13. Murder follows murder. The moment Milady reached the coast of France, she sent off a message to Richelieu at La Rochelle. It read, "I have succeeded. Buckingham will never leave England again. I await your next orders. Milady." The following day, a carriage pulled up in front of the inn where Milady had spent the night. A tall, dark nobleman got out. The man was shown to Milady's room, and he greeted her with a smile. "Your message arrived at La Rochelle a few hours ago," said Count Rochefort. "His Eminence was most pleased with your success." "Good," said Milady. "And now that the cardinal's business is done, I shall devote myself to my own plans. Has his Eminence discovered where Madame Bonacox is?" "Of course, Milady," said Rochefort. "His Eminence always finds out what he wishes to know. She is at the convent in Bethune." "Then we must prepare to leave immediately for Bethune," said Milady. They went down the stairs and into Rochefort's waiting carriage. The Count called to the coachman to head for the convent at Bethune, and they started off. Neither the Count nor Milady noticed the plump young man walking towards the inn from the ship that had just arrived from France. Neither did they realize that Planchet had recognized them and had heard Rochefort call out their destination. "Bethune," he muttered. "Why, that is where the Queen said Madame Bonacox is. Hidden! I must warn my master." Planchet hired a horse and rode at top speed to La Rochelle. In 2 hours he burst into D'Artagnan's tent, panting. "Welcome, Planchet!" cried D'Artagnan. "You arrived at a moment of victory. La Rochelle has fallen. But what news do you bring?" "I fear, sire, that all is lost. The Duke has been murdered." "Murdered!" cried D'Artagnan. "My God, that evil woman again! But that is done. What news do you have of Constance?" "She is at the convent at Bethune, sire." "But others are already on their way there." "Others? Which others?" "Milady and Rochefort," explained Planchet as he told his master what he had heard at the inn. "Oh, no!" cried D'Artagnan. "My two deadliest enemies are about to murder my love." "I must leave for Bethune immediately. Quickly, Planchet, summon Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, while I arrange for a leave." Meanwhile, the carriage, hearing Milady and Rochefort, entered the courtyard of the convent. "Wait for me here," said Milady. "This vengeance shall be mine alone." Milady got out of the carriage and presented herself to the Mother Superior at the door of the convent. "I am here on orders of his Eminence, the cardinal," said Milady. "Come in, my child," answered the nun. "How might we welcome you?" "I have brought a message from his Eminence for Madame Bonacox," said Milady. "Oh, poor Constance has been so lonely all these months. How she will welcome you! Her room is just at the top of the stairs. You will find her at her prayers." Milady climbed the stairs and knocked at the door. A sweet voice called, "Come in." "Ah, Madame Bonacox," said Milady sweetly, "I would have known you anywhere. After all that he has told me about you, I recognize you perfectly." "Who has told you about me?" asked Constance. "Why, D'Artagnan, of course." "D'Artagnan, you have seen him. But of course, my dear child, he is on his way here for you now. He asked me to ride ahead and help you get ready." "D'Artagnan coming for me? Oh, how I have dreamed of that for months." "He is several hours behind me, so you need not rush, my dear. We shall have time for dinner and a chat." The dinner was brought into the room a short time later. Constance was too nervous to eat, but Milady insisted that she would need her strength for the ride back to Paris, so she let Milady put a piece of chicken on her plate and pour out some wine for her. But as Milady poured the wine into Constance's glass, she opened a large ring on her finger and emptied a reddish powder into the wine. "Come, come," said Milady, raising her glass. "Do as I do." Constance, in her excitement, drained the glass along with Milady. Just as they were putting down their glasses, they heard the sound of horses outside the convent. Constance rose to go to the window, but immediately fell to her knees and turned pale. Milady, however, hurried to the window and recognized the plumed hat and red cloaks of the Musketeers. She turned from the window and rushed out of the room. "Wait for me," gasped Constance as she tried to drag herself to the door. But she managed to only go a few inches before she sank to the floor, unable to hear her name being called or the sound of boots rushing up the stairs. D'Artagnan burst into the room, followed by his friends. He fell to his knees and lifted the woman he loved in his arms. He covered her face with kisses, but her cold lips did not return them. Porthos shouted for help at the top of his lungs. Aramis ran to a table to pour some water for the woman, but he was stopped by the sight of Athos standing at the table and gazing with horror at the empty wine-glass in his hand. "Oh God," cried Athos, lifting his eyes to heaven, "how could you permit this crime?" Then he walked slowly to D'Artagnan, who still clung to the lifeless body in his arms. Athos lifted him up gently, and D'Artagnan buried his face in his friend's chest and broke into tears. "My friend," said Athos, "be a man. Women weep for the dead, men avenge them." D'Artagnan broke away from Athos and cried, "Then after them! First Rochefort, then Milady." "No," said Athos, "I shall take care of myself. That vengeance is mine. A husband owes that much to his wife." Porthos and Aramis looked at Athos, stunned. His wife? But D'Artagnan nodded. Yes, this vengeance did belong to Athos. D'Artagnan ran down into the courtyard and dragged Rochefort from the carriage. "You murderer!" he screamed. "You shall pay for your crimes." And there began the most terrible clashing of swords ever to be seen in the history of France. From the courtyard to the chapel, up the stairs and down, along stone corridors and inside rooms, the two men fought like tigers. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then Rochefort's sword sliced D'Artagnan's in two. But even this did not stop the enraged Gascon. With the cut-off sword in his hand and murder in his heart, D'Artagnan lunged at Rochefort, sending the stump of the sword into Rochefort's chest and out through his back. Both men fell, Rochefort dead and D'Artagnan gasping for breath. Porthos and Aramis came running to help him. Meanwhile, Milady, who had been watching this terrible duel from a doorway and waiting for a chance to get out unnoticed, rushed to the carriage. Just as she was about to climb in, she felt a pistol pressed against the back of her head. "You won't need a carriage where you are going, Milady," said Athos coldly. "I warned you, did I not?" Chapter 14. The Execution. Athos bound Milady's hand and foot and locked her inside the carriage. "Guard her well, my friends," he said to Porthos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan. "She must not escape with us this time. I have some business which will take me away for 2 hours." The three men looked at Athos, puzzled, but none would dare question him now. True to his word, Athos returned 2 hours later, accompanied by a tall man in a red cloak. A black mask covered his face. Athos waved for his friends to follow with the carriage. They rode in silence for several miles until they reached the bank of a river. There they stopped and dismounted. The masked man went to a carriage and dragged Milady to a river bank where the others waited. "What do you want with me?" she cried to the four men. "We are here to judge your crimes, madame," said Athos coldly. "D'Artagnan, you first." D'Artagnan stepped forward. "I accuse this woman of poisoning Constance Bonnecox and of trying to poison me with wine sent from the Red Dove Inn. God saved me, but another man, a brave guard to the king, died in my place." Then Porthos stepped forward. "I accuse this woman of arranging the murder of the Duke of Buckingham." Next came Aramis. "I accuse this woman of the death of John Felton, who had been hung because of this fiendish woman." "Now it is my turn," said Athos, trembling. "I married this woman against the wishes of my family. I gave her my name, my love, and my wealth. Then I discovered she was branded." "Cannot prove the crime for which I was branded," cried Milady. "You cannot find the man who branded me." "Silence," said a voice. "It is my turn." "Who are you?" cried Milady, as all eyes turned to the masked man. The man walked in front of Milady and slowly removed his mask. Milady studied his pale face, cold, hard eyes, and smoothly shaven head. and suddenly she screamed in terror, "Oh, no, 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 the executioner Lil, the man who branded me!" Athos was as stunned as his friends. He knew the man simply as the executioner of this province. He had no idea when he hired him that the man knew Milady. "Yes, I was once the executioner of Lyle," said the man, "and here is my story. This woman was once in training to be a nun. The young priest who was instructing her fell under the spell of her beauty and her charm. She managed to lure him away from the church with her promises of love. They had no money, and they ran away, so they stole the sacred treasure of the church and sold them. But they were caught and arrested. This woman lured her jailer away from his duties and persuaded him to let her escape. But the young priest was sentenced to 10 years in prison and to the branding iron. As the executioner of Lyle, I had to brand the guilty man, my brother. I swore that this woman should be punished as well. So I tracked her down and branded her with the same fleur-de-lis I had put on my brother. In the meantime, my brother had escaped from jail, and I was accused of helping him. So I was sentenced to take his place in irons. My brother did not know of this, so he rejoined the woman, and they settled in a small village where they lived as sister and brother while he worked at the church. The great lord of the province fell in love with her, and she left the priest to become the rich and titled Countess de la Fère. All eyes turned to Athos, who nodded that this was the truth. The executioner continued, "My brother could not bear his shame, so he left the village and returned to Lyle. When he heard that I was in irons for him, he gave himself up. That very night he hung himself. These were her crimes. This is why she was branded." Athos stepped forward. "Gentlemen, you have heard the crimes this woman has committed. What is your sentence?" "Death," said Porthos. "Death," said Aramis. "Death," said D'Artagnan. "Death," said the executioner Lyle. "And death say I," said Athos. Milady uttered a dreadful scream and fell to her knees. The executioner lifted her up and carried her to the small boat tied up on the bank. She kicked and fought, crying out, "You are not my judges, you are murderers!" Milady's cries were so piercing that they reached D'Artagnan's heart. He started to move towards her when a strong grip on his arm stopped him. "Take one more step, D'Artagnan," said Athos, "and we cross swords, and this time, I swear to God, I'll kill you." When the boat reached the opposite shore, the executioner threw his prisoner down on her knees. He raised his great sword above his head, then brought it down with all his strength. A terrible cry echoed across the river as he killed the evil Milady. The executioner took off his cloak and spread it out on the ground. He placed the remains of the body in it and tied the four corners. Then he tossed the bundle over his shoulder and returned to the boat. He rowed to the middle of the river and then stopped. He stood up and raised the bundle high above the water. "Let the justice of God be done," he cried, and he dropped the bundle into the water and watched as it sank to the bottom. 4 men on the bank removed their hats and said a prayer. All right, we're on the last chapter, so we'll finish up now. Chapter 15, The Four Musketeers. Paris was celebrating the great victory at La Rochelle when D'Artagnan and the Three Musketeers entered the city. As they approached the gates of the palace, they were stopped by a force of the cardinal's guards. "Monsieur D'Artagnan," said the leader, "in the name of his eminence, I arrest you. We have orders to bring you to the cardinal immediately." "Do not fear, my friend," said Athos. "We shall accompany you to Richelieu." The guards led D'Artagnan into the cardinal's study, but stopped his 3 friends at the door. "We shall wait for you, D'Artagnan," said Athos, loud enough for the cardinal to hear. D'Artagnan stood facing the cardinal across a long table. This was his first meeting with Richelieu, and he feared his last. "Monsieur," said the cardinal, "I had hoped one day to hold out my hand in friendship and in praise of your bravery, but I cannot do so now, for you are charged with the murder of a trusted servant of France." "That woman was guilty of many crimes," said D'Artagnan, "including murder. Not once, but many times over. I only repaid her with a like crime." "So you did," said Rochefort, too. "That was quite an accomplishment for a young Gascon, but your victories are too costly, sir." both for me and for France. You shall have to pay for your crimes with your life." "I think not, monsieur," said D'Artagnan, with a smile, "for I have a proper warrant for all that I have done." "A warrant?" asked Richelieu in surprise. "Signed by whom?" "By your Eminence," said D'Artagnan, as he held out the paper which Athos had taken from a lady at the Red Dove Inn. Richelieu took the paper and read, "It is by my order, and for the good of France, that the bearer of this letter has done what he has done. The 3rd December, 1627. Richelieu." After he had finished reading, Richelieu sat in deep thought for several minutes, twisting and untwisting the paper in his hands. Then he looked up and smiled. "One should be more careful of what one puts on paper," he said, tearing the warrant to bits. He picked up his pen and began writing on a large sheet of parchment. "I am lost," thought D'Artagnan. "He is writing my death order. I shall die bravely." "Here, sir," said the cardinal, handing the parchment to D'Artagnan. "Why, it's a commission as a lieutenant in the King's Musketeers," he cried. "Yes, monsieur," said the cardinal. "Simply fill in your name." "Oh, monsieur," cried D'Artagnan, falling to his knees, "I do not deserve such a commission. Serving as a private in the Musketeers would be reward enough for me. I have 3 friends who are much more worthy of a lieutenant's commission than I am." "Well, do what you like with it, sir, but remember, it is to you that I give it. Now, good day, Monsieur D'Artagnan." D'Artagnan left the room in a daze. "Are you all right, my friend?" cried Athos. D'Artagnan stumbled through the doorway. "Yes," stammered D'Artagnan. "Look, Athos, the cardinal gave me this commission, but I can't take it. It should go to you." Athos smiled warmly and replied, "My dear friend, the commission is far too much for a common soldier like Athos, and far too little for the Count de la Fere. You have earned it. You keep it." D'Artagnan pushed the parchment at Porthos. "And you, my friend," he said, "just think how splendid you will look in a lieutenant's uniform." "My dear friend," said Porthos, handing the commission back to D'Artagnan, "I shall soon be wearing the clothing of a nobleman, for my dear Duchess has just come into a sizable sum of money. She has been waiting for me for years, and now I shall marry her and take care of her, and the money. So keep the lieutenancy. It is not something for a nobleman." "You," cried D'Artagnan, pushing the commission to Aramis, "you are a man of education, of wisdom. You are far more worthy of this lieutenancy than I am." "My dear friend," said Aramis, "you forgot that I am a musketeer, only temporarily. I still plan to join the priesthood when I have the time. No, keep the commission. You will make a brave and daring lieutenant." "But my friends," cried D'Artagnan, "if I accept this commission and become an officer, I shall lose all my friends. An officer does not have friends." "Never fear," said Athos, as he wrote D'Artagnan's name on the blank line of the parchment. "Even though we are now the 4 Musketeers, we shall always be one for all and all for one." "Yes," they shouted together, crossing their 4 hands, "all for one and one for all." All right, and that is the end of the 3 Musketeers. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you come back next time as we start another book on our next chapter club. Thank you.